We are Rogue Media Sports.
There are any number of reasons you might consider selling your home. To move closer to family, live within a smaller budget, or just wanting a change of scenery. Whatever your reasons, having to figure out all the various housing market trends in your area may not be what you signed up for. That's where an agent who is a realtor comes in. Realtors have the expertise to help you find the right price and navigate the process to sell your home in a way that's right for you. That's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's a situation where it's an uncontrolled environment and everybody's fending for themselves to the best of their ability while trying to show some level of professional courtesy. And I think we've earned that from the people here. We're grateful to have it, and we try to do the same thing for them.
Yeah. No, I don't really respect anybody out here.
It is the Doomsday Podcast. Matt Mosley alongside Ed Warder. Day 2 of our trip.
Our first road trip.
It is our first Doomsday road trip, although you getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, that was a little bit of a road trip, but I didn't get to go on that one.
First trip where you were paying any of the expenses.
Yeah, all the expenses, I believe, so
nice.
far.
I'll eat better.
I think you've been eating on the hog. Now, today, and we've got some great interviews lined up for you over the next couple of days. We'll be out here through Thursday. Our separate ways. I'm going on vacation. I've worked so hard. It is time for me to go on vacation, Ed. But on a serious note,
is there a difference between vacation and hiatus? That thing you took a couple weeks ago.
Very much. I was working hard during the hiatus to kind of get us to where we need to be. As we come to you, day 2 of the Doomsday trip. And one of the fun things, I think Frito will appreciate this, our Frito Nation Productions, our producer, folks know what this podcast is already. And we even had a Ring of Honor member today that you'll hear from tomorrow.
Really?
Revealing stuff, yeah. But he came up today and basically said, when are you going to have me on the podcast?
That's the first thing he said.
That's how we want this to work. Now, let's start with some news today. Tyrone Crawford, about halfway or maybe a little bit toward the end of practice today, team drills. Now, this was interesting. And, Ed, I don't know what position we were moving around different areas today. I did see this in real time. What happened is Zeke Elliott was running right, decided to reverse field. This is always an issue, and especially in training camp when a play kind of goes crazy and you're like, oh, goodness, what's going to happen here? And something bad did happen. Pursuing sort of on the backside was Tyrone Crawford. And, in fact, the hit, he angered Zeke Elliott a little bit because it wasn't like a huge hit, but it was enough to knock Zeke Elliott down. In fact, he came up and kind of threw the football. Well, Tyrone Crawford stayed down on the ground in what has now been revealed to be an
right ankle injury.
Right.
Took him off on the cart.
Mm-hmm.
Trainer Britt Brown, one of the team doctors, went with him. He did not return to practice. And the Cowboys are used to losing defensive linemen primarily to suspension, not so much injury. And this is going to challenge them because if it's put them out for any length of time, obviously we know they're going to start the season without Randy Gregory, without DeMontre Moore, without David Irving, and, Charles Tapper's a young guy that they have, great hopes for, continues to miss practices with injuries. He's a question mark. This is going to be something that potentially puts a lot more pressure on their number 1 draft pick, Taco Charlton, who did not impress Rod Marinelli in his rookie debut in the preseason Hall of Fame game.
Based on both what he's paid and he's they've hoped he would kind of grow into a leadership role. He's already had a couple of shoulder surgeries. He has had some issues, and they needed him to have a big year, and they cannot. He's one of the anchors of this defensive line. I would say, as strange as this sounds, Ed, if you ask me right now, and I had this come up in the Dallas Morning News chat, who will be the best defensive lineman for the Dallas Cowboys is Malik Collins, a former third-round pick out of Nebraska, who was a rookie last season, and I think he's going to have to be a disruptive player for the Cowboys. But this is a major concern as they sit here. And so Tyrone Crawford carted off. And as you explained it, Ed, I was over there kind of watching that scene immediately when he got hurt. And so his reaction was that it was a somewhat significant type injury. Now, Ed, you were looking a minute ago at a replay of it and then even some still shots. And you can see
pretty significant turn of the ankle.
Yeah. So I think probably best case scenario, probably a high ankle. Well, it's not the best case scenario. A low ankle sprain would be the best, but a high ankle sprain generally keeps players out somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 4 weeks at least. And I think that's when you're pretty aggressive in getting a player back. So
I think if it's just a sprain and not a high ankle sprain, there's a very strong likelihood that he'd be back for the start of the season, although he obviously wouldn't have had much preparation going into that first game. And as long as there's not a fracture and it's not a high ankle sprain, I think there'd be a pretty good chance of him recovering in time to play.
So, Matt, I think the thing is that they can really ill afford to lose any defensive lineman, given that they come into this training camp vulnerable as it is on defense, playing a lot of young people in the secondary, given the turnover that they have there in the offseason. And now they lose one of their most accomplished veteran defensive linemen for who knows how long.
Yeah, I think it's a major setback, and it's going to put more pressure on some players. Charles Tapper, DeMarcus Lawrence, player that was suspended last year, and this is what happens. This is another reason when you start getting these players suspended, the suspensions, everything that's happened, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it really puts you in a pinch from an injury, and you can't really afford injuries. And this is a team that has really had to overcome some injuries in the past. Now, I will say this: I had an up close look at sort of the aftermath of this, and it was a guy that was in anguish and was very upset, and some expletives were thrown out, and he did not react like a guy. He did not react like a guy who was going to, be able to bounce back quickly. So I think this was a rough day for the Cowboys, watching him cart it off. Now, the guy who he did tackle on that play, Zeke Elliott, it's continued to be a fascinating camp for him. And, of course, we're waiting to see if something is going to come down from the league. This cloud has hung over him, and it's been a huge story in this camp with Zeke Elliott. And we had an opportunity today and it was Ed's idea. I thought it was a great idea. His running backs coach, and I'm talking about Gary Brown, who played for 3 different teams, former NFL player himself. And unlike a lot of people who have not wanted to talk about any of Zeke's sort of off-the-field issues, Gary Brown was willing to address that. And he was also very upfront on what are the next steps in Zeke's game. And here is that our visit with Gary Brown.
It is the Doomsday Podcast, live from Oxnard, California, and someone we wanted to talk to who
it's kind of my idea.
Presided. It is. Ed had a good idea for once. But the man who presided over one of the greatest rookie seasons in the history of the NFL, Ed, introduce him.
And a guy who's a former NFL running back himself, Gary Brown.
Yes.
Coaches maybe the most interesting position on this team, given the number of talented veteran players you've got.
Yeah.
So going into year 2, what things have you put as a priority in terms of where Ezekiel Elliott can improve after leading the NFL in rushing as a rookie?
Right. Yeah, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about his second level running, being more effective, being more explosive in the second level. Obviously, he has the speed to take it the distance. We were going to work on the more make-you-miss type things so we can really get some more of those home run home run runs.
Incorporate more of the Barry Sanders?
Absolutely. We're going to work on his lateral quickness, his vision, things of that nature, being able to take advantage of angles that safeties are giving us. So we can really, really take advantage when we do get in the secondary.
As one of the off-season storylines has been, okay, what are the next steps? You talk about the second-level running. What about the passing game? You saw a guy like LaDainian Tomlinson go in the Hall of Fame the other night. Obviously, he put up big numbers in the passing game. Yeah. Where can Zeke help you in that area? And do you think there's a lot of potential there?
I think there's huge potential there. I think that he has the skill set to be a great receiver, especially what we do with him as far as the check downs, the flat routes, the angle routes, the things that we ask him to do. He's very good at it. Now we're going to try to expand his role with some choice routes, maybe put him outside, do some different things to take advantage of his skill set.
What about the unknown of how's he handling mentally being out here getting ready for a season and he's not sure whether he's going to be able to play at the start of the season or for how many games he might miss depending on the NFL's decision regarding discipline?
Well, I think the testament to his focus on just focusing on when he gets between the lines. It's all about football. And whatever happens is going to happen. And he can't really worry about that. It's in the other people's hands now. He gave his side of the story. He did everything that the league was asking him to do. And we just got to see what happens. Hopefully, we'll get the decision quick and we can move forward from there.
What would you do, or how comfortable are you with the other two veterans you have, Darren McFadden and Alfred Morris?
Very comfortable. Obviously, Darren's been a 1,000-yard rusher in this league, so has Alfred. And we're very confident in what we have. We just want to make sure that we do everything we can to support Zeke if that were to happen. If not, then those guys are there to support him as far as like being a backup role and doing the things that are necessary.
What about, fans always love, focusing on some of these young players and we got to see a lot of Rod Smith in that game. And for people that don't know, that's Jaylon Smith's brother, and Rod played at Ohio State. What did you see from him? I know sometimes you don't know until you really get him in those moments in the game. What did you gather from that? And how far away is he from being a guy that could maybe be in the mix if you need him, early in the season?
Well, I think Rod is a big, strong, fast tailback that has uncanny lateral quickness. You don't really notice it until you're up close to him. He does have really good feet. He runs with great power. The thing with him is he just has to learn how to play. He's learning every day. He's getting better. And he's going to be another guy that's going to be a force to reckon with when we give him an opportunity to carry the ball. He's so big and so strong, and he has enough speed to make you a little bit worried about when he gets to the second level. So he's been working. He's working really hard, and he's been doing the things necessary to get himself on the field.
When you played, who were you most similar to among the guys you're now coaching?
Wow. It's hard to say.
I know you'd like to think Zeke.
I would like to think that, but we both know that's not true. I think, I was just kind of like that work. I brought my work pail to work, and I was kind of like a guy that just hammered out the 4-yard runs. I wasn't very spectacular, but I enjoyed playing, and I enjoyed coaching.
That sounds like Alfred Morris.
Pretty much, but Alfred Morris probably has a little bit more shiftiness than I probably had, so.
You just ran him over.
Yeah, I just, and that's probably why my knees are hurting now.
What's the room like when you're in there with these guys?
It's good. It's good. They, I think at first, they want to know what I know as far as, my knowledge of the game and stuff like that. When they realize that I played, they loosen up a little bit. And then when they realize that, hey, you had a couple 1,000-yard seasons, then they really loosen up. And then they really listen to me. So it's a good thing.
They did their research. They look you up.
They do their research now. They get old pictures and find all types of stuff. So it's a good thing.
Did you show them like Earl Campbell's runs and tell them that was you?
No. You can't fool them nowadays. Now with YouTube and the internet and Twitter and everything, you can't fool them. So it's a good thing.
We talked to Wade Wilson yesterday, and he was obviously someone that loved Dak Prescott. Now, a lot of people claim to have known Dak Prescott was going to be this good now.
Right.
Were you sort of like that with Zeke? I mean, he was easily the top back coming out of college. Mm-hmm. You also know what had happened with Trent Richardson and some others that had caused teams to kind of get away from taking backs early in the draft. Right. What was it about Zeke coming out that made you and others go, it's worth the risk, even though maybe teams have gotten away from this a bit?
I think it's his immense skill set. I think that you can't, when you got a guy like that, you really can't go with the norm and what everybody's saying about you don't take backs that high. When a guy has the ability to come in and change your franchise, you got to take him. I think we're trying to get away from that stereotype or that mindset that backs shouldn't go in the first round. Obviously, with Zeke doing his thing and Fournette coming in, I anticipate him to do the same things. The backs are making a comeback. In the first, McCaffrey, all those guys, they're making a comeback. So if we can get away from that mindset, because you guys both know, at the end of the day, 4-minute offense is important. Closing games down in the cold weather is important. And you got to have that workhorse back there, or you're going to be chucking it all day, and that's not good either.
How important is Zeke's presence to Dak as a young quarterback and to protecting your defense and not allowing them to be exposed?
Well, I think they work hand in hand. I think with Dak's skill set starting to grow too, we're starting to see a little bit more pass defense, whereas early in the season was all 8-9 man front. So I think they work together. I think that Dak helps him out. Zeke helps him out, especially running the ball late in games where Dak doesn't have to make all the plays. He doesn't have to make the long throws. He can hit Dez on a short route or Witt or Beasley or whoever and still be effective. So I think they work hand in hand really well.
When you played, obviously, it's not like you played 3 decades ago. It's not that long ago. But the internet wasn't as huge of a thing. Twitter wasn't. Right. Instagram, all those things.
More podcasts.
What have you, having played the game, but knowing this is a different environment now with the media, how have you tried to counsel Zeke as he navigates some of these situations he's been in, which obviously one thing was a serious allegation that, who knows, we will find out, I guess, someday what all happened with that. Some seem to be sort of just these weird things that happen to guys that are recognized. What's been your advice to him on maybe how to handle this?
Well, you have to be smart. You have to, the people around you have to be smart. The things you're doing, you got to ask yourself before you do them, if this comes out, will my parents be embarrassed? Will I be embarrassed? Will the organization be embarrassed? And if that's the case, then you can't do those things. Obviously, being that he's young and energetic and, all these things, it's very hard for me to judge a guy that's 20, 21 years old that, has the world by the tail and tell him, hey, I didn't make those mistakes. Well, I did make those mistakes. The difference is that there wasn't cell phones that had cameras and there wasn't the internet boom and stuff like that. But I can't use that as an excuse either. I have to make sure that he understands that his responsibility, his worth, his brand is more important than those nights going out in the club and maybe getting into some things that you don't really want to get into. And I think he's understanding that now. I think, he's been bit a few times and he understands that his importance to not only the Cowboys but to his own family is probably more important than the things he's doing.
Another experience that maybe can emphasize that for him was the one he just had going to the Hall of Fame and watching 2 running backs like LaDainian Tomlinson and Terrell Davis going to the Hall of Fame, being around the 2 Cowboys high draft pick running backs who were in the Hall of Fame,
Absolutely.
Tony Dorsett and Emmitt Smith. Do you think he
has a tremendous support system? I think it's just a matter of him saying, you know what, I'm going to surround myself with these guys and not the guys that are going to want to make me be at the club all the time. Be around these guys that have done it and are in a place that I want to be. So hopefully he's learning that. I think he is. So we'll just keep moving forward from there.
I can't remember if you're old enough to have ever played with, like, Eric Dickerson. I mean, I know y'all had at least one same team that you shared, but were you ever on the roster with Dickerson?
No.
Never were? Okay.
No.
You had some Rams, didn't you, in your background?
No,
Oilers,
Chargers, and Giants. Okay. Well, we'll strike that last day. But of all the sort of great backs you've either coached or played with, does Zeke have a chance to be the best?
Well, that's a lofty goal. You never want to try to put goals like that on guys this early in their career. Does he have the skill set? Yes, but there's a lot more to it that goes with it than just having the skill set. You got to have the work ethic. You got to have the focus. You got to be lucky, but not getting injured. So he's very young in his career, and we're not talking about that. We're just talking about getting better every day.
One thing people don't know about him, I think, is they see his importance on the field, but in the locker room and in meetings and just in general, he seems like kind of the life of the team in many ways.
Absolutely. He is. He's a very energetic young guy that brings a lot of energy, not only to the meetings, but to practice and to the team in general. So, I think the team thrives on that, and that's a good thing. If we can just hone it in when he gets away from us, we're going to have something special then.
Coach, we appreciate it, and we wish you the best the rest of camp.
And we can't do this again until tomorrow. You were so good. Unfortunately, I may have lied about the gifts that we present our gifts.
No, when I do produce Doomsday T-shirts, I will.
The first one goes right.
And you were too young to have played against the true Doomsday defenses, but but you do remember those guys. That whole crew.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Always great to talk to Gary. Great guy.
I think so too. I think so too. Yeah, I'm glad
Zeke's lucky to have him.
Okay, yeah. All right. I'm glad we did this.
And that was Gary Brown, running backs coach for the Cowboys, and talking about Zeke Elliott, and then also talking about some of the backup plans for if Zeke Elliott's out that the Cowboys are having to look at. As we come to you live from Oxnard, we've just finished the evening practice. We talked to you about the injury to Tyrone Crawford and what that's going to mean. I think at this point, it's, we also need to talk about an ongoing story and one of the big stories out here, and it's Jaylon Smith. He did not practice today. Ed and I got to see him practice yesterday. All eyes have been on him. He's an impressive guy. He's an impressive guy to listen to. Earlier this offseason, Ed and I had a chance to sit down with Jaylon or visit with him over the phone for about an hour, and it was a fascinating interview. And so the Doomsday Podcast caught up with Jaylon. And before we listen to it, Ed, and I have to say this about the assembled media out here. We've only been here for a couple of days, and I didn't mean for this to happen, but I feel like we're setting the tone for camp, because no matter who we track down, the entire media always ends up surrounding us. I mean, it doesn't matter where we sneak off to. And so I tend to get frustrated in those situations, but I'm trying to just sort of be flattered by it. How do you respond to that?
I think it's just an indication of the fact that we've located, identified, and gotten cooperation from the newsmakers on this football team and in this camp. The most, people who can answer the most intriguing questions that linger around this team at this point in the year. And I think people have shown good discretion in, allowing us to do our thing for the most part, and then encircling us and eavesdropping a bit, and before they start asking their own questions. It's a situation where it's an uncontrolled environment, and everybody's fending for themselves to the best of their ability while trying to show some level of professional courtesy. And I think we've earned that from the people here. We're grateful to have it, and we try to do the same thing for them.
Yeah. No, I don't really respect anybody out here. But no, I would say that though our relationship has grown with Jaylon Smith, he's an interesting guy. He's trying not to say much. He's trying not to shed light. I do feel like he sees light in the tunnel. Today, Jason Garrett was asked, will he play in a game? Does he need to play in a game? Or I think it was actually, will he? And Jason Garrett answered absolutely. So we know it's coming.
It's a matter of when.
I think Jaylon indicates in what you're about to hear, Ed, that this thing, I think he's hoping it happens in a hurry, because unlike...
I think he wishes it would have happened last week, but...
I think you're right.
Keep in mind that was the first of 5 preseason games. It's an extra game. Most teams don't play that game. So this is really the beginning of the normal preseason game week, and it still may be 1 week too early to play him. But they've got to. Garrett did commit to playing him in the preseason at some point, and this is a guy who's got to become comfortable with coming back from this significant injury. It's probably as significant an injury as you can suffer and still have an NFL career, which his was in jeopardy for a long time. And he has to show the coaches what he can do, that they can trust him to play in a game and be effective at his position. And that's only going to happen in the preseason. And like I said, he's psychologically, he's a lot to overcome. He's got to prove himself to the coaches that what they're seeing in these practices where they're not ever really tackling anybody. He could show all the change of direction and speed and explosion that he wants, but he's got to prove that he can take the right angles and execute and get to the ball carrier and make the tackle and finish the play. He can only do that in game conditions.
I'm fascinated with this guy for so many reasons, not the least of which you don't have many careers where everybody's sitting around waiting on a nerve to regenerate. I mean, this is just something you don't normally see, and that's why If we had to come up with the most talked about players on this roster, it would not be first round pick Taco Charlton. It wouldn't be any of these other picks, these rookies this season like it usually is. It's not Dez. It's not Witten. It's not even Dak. I think it's Jaylon Smith. I think that's who folks are the most just obsessed with. And, of course, the Doomsday Podcast was able to go one-on-one with Jaylon Smith.
Or two-on-one.
2-on-1. Here he is.
Jaylon, one of our highest number as far as downloads. He was a big get for us.
Second only to me getting fired.
Yeah, when Ed got fired, that did it. Jaylon, now you're a couple of weeks into camp. Are you? I know you're chomping at the bit, but it was our first time to get to see you in training camp yesterday, and to our naked eye, looked like you were diagnosing plays well. How did you feel out there? Are you just getting more and more excited about it?
Yeah, I feel great. For me, it's just taking it day by day. Feeling a lot more comfortable. So it's just a process.
What are your expectations for getting on the field and actually playing?
Very soon. Very soon.
There's a game in a couple days. That soon?
Whenever they let me play, I'll be out there.
How close do you feel as you're on the field to being what you once were and what you expect of yourself?
I feel great. For me, it's like I said, it's just taking it day by day, and the approach is the same. It's just working hard and getting better. Were you a little surprised by just the fact that the instincts? We talked to Marinelli, and he was just like, he said that's what made you special, is just that your instincts and how you. Were you surprised at all that none of that ever went away? That it's come back so quickly? That just sort of the mental aspects, the instinctual aspects at all? No, I just think it's the nature of who I am as a player. Being very instinctual, having, great striking ability, and, it's just a process. For me, it's just about getting reps, and I'm very happy and thankful to be a part of the Cowboys.
Sean Lee says that you're very close to being dominating. Mm-hmm. Do you share that sentiment and that point of view?
It's just, a situation where, taking a year off, never being hurt before, but, being a dominant player in college. And it's something, that I really look forward to, to being here in the National Football League. For me, it's just controlling what I can control. It's a matter of time.
Stephen Jones said yesterday that you're going to be here a long time, 10 years or more, and we've got to protect Jaylon from Jaylon in terms of not asking you to do too much too early, not playing you too soon. Is that the sort of conservative approach you want to take personally, or does your competitive instinct want to get back out there?
Definitely love the relationship. That I've built with the Joneses. It's a great opportunity to be here, part of America's team, and like you said, it's going to be a long journey. Really looking forward to that relationship and being able to to build some great teams here. But I'm thankful to be a part of this one, and I'll focus on day by day.
Was there anybody that you had exposure to in Canton that just stood out like crazy? Some of the greatest all-time players were there. Anybody that you ever idolized or got to spend a little time with that really made an impact on you?
Rob Wilson is from my hometown, from Fort Wayne, Indiana. His first cousin is actually married to my mother, so very fond of each other. Got to watch him a lot, go to his camps growing up and things like that. He's a Hall of Famer, so definitely look up to him. But so it was my first time in Canton. It was a great experience, wonderful experience.
Did it have a lasting effect on you, do you think, in terms of you looking to see what's maybe possible for you as a player eventually?
For me, I'm focusing on right now. So.
What about Sean Lee? What mentoring role has he served for you?
He served a great role, tremendous role. Just, him being a mentor to me and really learning a lot from him this past year.
Have you liked the schedule that they've had you following, giving you some days off now and then?
I think we're all in alignment with, the plan. We've built a great foundation, and we'll continue at that. But whenever I'm out here, I'm flying around, and I'm loving the game.
You probably don't want to share this with us, but do you know in your mind which preseason game? Do you already kind of have that in mind that you will be on the field? Because it'll be a pretty big deal for you, I would think.
I believe it's going to be soon. For me, it's like I said, it's just taking it day by day, and whenever they say I can go, then I'll go. And I'm not sure what they've told you, but they haven't let me know anything yet. So
how do you balance your need to play after a year off and acclimate yourself to the NFL, the speed of the game, and so forth, versus making sure that they're conservative in the exposure your leg gets and you're not playing too soon?
Well, playing in practice. Getting reps in practice, going against, Zeke Elliott and Dak Prescott, this offensive line, legendary, that we've had, it's definitely I'm getting some great reps, going against the Dallas Cowboys. So, that'll continue. And, when my time comes, I'll be
But you're not tackling, and it's not, the speed's not the same in practice as it is in the games, according to the players who have done both.
I think it's a great idea when you're going against some great players in practice. So.
All right, thank you for your commitment to the Doomsday Podcast. And it has been a big day. Ed Werder, Matt Mosley out with the Doomsday Podcast. We have taken over Oxnard. If you're a big name and you're part of this roster or you're part of this coaching staff, you will eventually talk to Doomsday. Ed, let's have our final thoughts. I want to see kind of what your biggest takeaway with today. I thought Dak responding to questions today. There were some interesting moments in what he had to go over. One thing he told us, I thought he kind of distanced from a couple of months ago when we had a chance to visit with Dak at David Yurman Jewelry. Boy, love those diamonds over there at David Yurman, by the way. He was talking about his that he'd been really studying Matt Ryan
and the
Atlanta offense. And today, when I brought that up, he was kind of like, yeah, but I've been looking at a lot of other people too. So I don't think he didn't want to come across.
You know what I think it is, Matt? I think they've been studying the play action game that the Falcons use, because obviously they had two great backs last year, and Matt Ryan had great success in the play action game. Dak was one of the highest rated passers in football on play action pass plays as well. But I think they're looking for ways to try to create more explosive plays in the passing game using play action down the field like the Falcons do, getting the ball to Julio Jones. They want to do the same thing with Des Bryant.
I want to make this statement, and then I want you to think back on all your years covering the Cowboys. And you obviously go back to those early 90s teams and the great teams of the 90s. So I know we've been here about 2.5 days. I'm hard pressed to remember a first round pick. Now, when you take some of these linemen, I get it. We're not going to talk about Zach Martin or Frederick every single day, but I don't know if I can ever remember a more anonymous first-round pick.
How about a couple of other guys who played his position and were taking similar positions in the draft? How about Ebenezer Ekubon, Shante Carver? Lord, they hope he's a better player than either one of those guys. Greg Ellis. I think, he's a guy that, you don't hear Rod Marinelli criticize players in public after games, and yet he was asked about Taco the other night after the game against the Cardinals, and he said, not good enough. That's some pretty rare criticism, specific criticism from Rod Marinelli, the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, he was pretty rough on him, singled him out, and 16 plays, he rushed the passer, I believe, 7 times, according to Pro Football Focus, and did not record a tackle, did not have a pressure, did not get on the stat sheet. So an inauspicious start for Taco Charlton, but as we say, it's still early. And so we will be here, of course, tomorrow to monitor everything. And I'll just say this again. I believe tomorrow our interview with a Ring of Honor member, Darren Woodson, and shedding some light on his thoughts on some things that took place in the 90s. Jimmy Johnson, and of course, Barry Switzer on the last Super Bowl. That I pretty remarkable stuff, Ed. So
he's still angry about the way it all ended for that dominant team in the early 90s that won 3 out of 4 Super Bowls. Darren Woodson does not feel fulfilled about that. And he also had some great thoughts, on a guy who was a role model, and the Zeke Elliott issues that he's encountered and what he would say to him and what his concerns are about this team off the field. And then, the possibility that 6 players could be on the suspended list when the Cowboys open against the Giants.
Yeah. It's a suspension-heavy team.
But the interview was great, and it was largely because his opinions were so strong and so valid because of who he is in this organization and what he accomplished and what he still represents.
I thought it was mainly that we asked good questions, but if you want to give him the credit, that's fine. Ed, have a pleasant evening. I'm going to go.
Happy anniversary, Matt.
Hey,
and
thank
to the
you.
lovely Meredith. I don't know how she's made it as long as she has, but God love her. I can barely do 6 months with you.
19 years we celebrate tonight. Thanks for Frito Nation Productions, that is. Good night from Oxnard, everybody.
It's one thing falling in love with a house, picturing yourself moving in and calling it home, and quite another navigating the world of price negotiating, mortgage lenders, and finding the budget that works best for you. An agent who's a Realtor can make understanding that world easier. Realtors have the expertise, access to proprietary data, and tools to help you get from imagining living somewhere to actually doing it. That's the kind of help we can provide. Because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.